Minerals are always important, but over the age of 40 or so, we have to start paying extra attention to it. Now, it's not just because we need them for specific functions within the body more. I mean, arguably we do, but it's more so about what we are losing. Okay, there's two things that come into play. As we get older, we do start to develop a little bit more in the way of potential insulin resistance. It's simply this. We've had a lifetime of consuming carbohydrates, a lifetime of probably not implementing measures that can improve insulin resistance, because a lot of that stuff is just starting to come out into the open now. So if we're over 50, that means we have 40, 50 years of a lot of carbohydrate consumption, a lot of bombardment of the cells in terms of insulin, meaning that, like, yes, if you look at the data and you look at the observational research and you look at even some of the epidemiological stuff, as people get older, the rate of insulin resistance increases more. If insulin resistance increases more, that means a lot of times we'll see elevations in blood sugar. Potential elevations in blood sugar mean that, well, guess what? You draw more water into the bloodstream, which can result in urinating out more fluid. Okay, so this is why, like, for an extreme situation, if you look at someone that's a type 2 diabetic, a lot of times they're thirsty all the time. A lot of times they're peeing a lot more. Okay, this is simply because increases in blood sugar and you have this kind of diuretic effect. So you end up losing water. They become very dehydrated. Now, I'm not saying that you are a type 2 diabetic. That's not what I'm saying at all. But as we get older, we run a much higher chance of becoming more insulin resistant, which plays a role in potential dehydration. Now, that's not the point of this video. I think the bigger piece is to look at some research that was surrounding sweating, and especially when it comes down to muscle recovery, because as we get older, if we are dehydrated, it really affects our overall muscle recovery significantly. And muscle recovery is like one of the most important things. We need to consistently be keeping tension on our muscles. We need to consistently be moving our bodies to keep our youth, right? Because muscle is now seen much less as just an appendage that's hanging off of our bones and our skeletal system. It's not just to move things and lift things and look pretty. Muscle is a very vital organ when it comes down to longevity, okay? If you start looking at the research, you see, oh, okay, well, sarcopenia, muscle wasting, is associated with aging. And aging is, and so I used to think that it was just correlation. We don't know that it's causation, we're not saying that, but we used to think that, oh, people just get older, they lose muscle. Didn't really look at it the other way around, that maybe the wasting of muscle is attributing to aging. So my point in saying that isn't that dehydration has a concrete role with that. My point is saying you need to be able to recover, you need to be able to move, okay? And that's the biggest complaint that people over 50 have, is like, I want to work out, but when I work out, it debilitates me. And I feel like I can't live my normal life. So therefore, it's easier for me to not work out and feel a little bit miserable in that world. Now, that makes sense, because there's a study that was published in the journal Athletic Training that had demonstrated that when you're dehydrated, you end up having more delayed onset muscle soreness, right? So when you're dehydrated, you get more sore. That would make it difficult to want to go work out. There's also quite a bit of documented research that demonstrates that when you are dehydrated, it exacerbates the effects of like the exercise-induced muscle damage. So this could be from a number of different things. Like we have on our cells, we have this cell membrane. When we're dehydrated, that cell membrane might not be as strong or fluid. That membrane fluidity becomes very, very, very important for cellular signaling, for communication, for nutrients, and for proper transduction, for the overall like nutrients to get into the cell, and all of that to really happen. So when you dive into this, there's an interesting study that was published in the journal Physiology, and it found that older people respond differently to dehydration than younger people. So let me back up for a second. Have you ever noticed older people, when they're in the gym, they sweat a lot more? It seems like they sweat a lot more, and they continue to sweat. Well, this is kind of a normal thing for them, because dehydration doesn't seem to affect the thermoregulation in older people like it does in younger people. So dehydration doesn't reduce heat loss in older people, okay? So basically, if you get dehydrated, you would think that heat loss would slow down in an effort to sort of save the body from dehydrating more. In older people, when they get dehydrated, it doesn't slow down heat loss. So the heat loss is still happening, right? So essentially, you're still sweating, you're still reducing heat. The body is trying to reduce heat. So in other words, you get dehydrated, it doesn't signal to stop the sweating. So you sweat a lot more, so you lose minerals even more. So when you're exercising or you're in a hot and humid environment, it becomes super, super important. And salt obviously is something that you lose with that. So one of the things I want to focus on is how salt plays such a role in our cognitive function, how salt plays such a role even in our appetite. Okay, the way the nervous system works, it needs salt for an action potential to actually signal to make movement. Our central nervous system requires sodium and potassium. That's why I always say no matter what, like whether you're young or old, having a good electrolyte is always good. I put a link down below for the electrolytes I recommend. It's called LMNT, LMNT. The link down below is actually for a free sample pack. If you did want to try it, you get 8 sample packs of LMNT, totally free. You just pay a couple bucks shipping. So that link is down below, or you can go to drinklmnt.com/Thomas. So drink, DRINK, LMNT.com/Thomas. So that's totally a free trial thing. So you can try out 8 sample packs of LMNT, and we can put it in your water bottle, take it with you, do it when you work out, whatever it is you want to do. You just pay a couple bucks for shipping, so nothing, and your hands aren't tied to anything. It's just simple. You can try it out. If you like it, go for it. I figured that's the best way to be able to promote the electrolyte that I like the most. So the way the nervous system works is salt transmit the signal for the nervous system. Like if your brain says, okay, arms move. Well, sodium is really the big catalyst with all this. So it's like a slingshot. Sodium sort of travels down a nerve, okay? Then potassium pulls it back, slings the sodium more, and it's like that's how you're actually getting the electrical signal. So when you're talking about cramping, when you're talking about fatigue, and you're talking about all of this, think about how critical sodium is. So we have muscle, we have sodium, we have all this playing such a role, and we don't even think about how it plays a role with dehydration. But then you factor in the brain, right? The brain is a crazy network and labyrinth of neurons and nerves and just overall just nerve matter, right? It's all of that. It's all electrical. So if our sodium levels are out of whack, our potassium levels are out of whack because we're dehydrated and we're not recovering, well, think about how it's affecting our brain. So it all comes full circle. I'm not saying that the mineral situation is the reason people aren't active as they get older or the reason that people age. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that it's all cumulative. Okay, the dehydration and its effect on our overall recovery, the dehydration and its effect on our potential mood. There's even some potential links with dehydration and how it affects our hunger. Okay, so it all kind of links back. And it's not just about the water. Remember, when you lose water, you're losing the salt. And then if you just replenish the water without the salt, well, you have no salt to retain the water. So it becomes very important. Now, one thing I will caution, if you're someone that's over 50 and you're hypertensive, yeah, you may not be someone that wants to add a bunch of sodium into the mix. So I'm not necessarily suggesting you add a bunch of salt to your steak and eggs. I'm suggesting that if you are sweating and you know you're losing water, it probably becomes more important to add salt to your diet over the age of 50. And again, you don't have to use electrolytes that I talk about. You can add good Himalayan pink salt. You can add like Redmond real salt. You can add even iodized salt if you want. It's just devoid of a lot of the nutrients that you might get from other stuff. So just simply add it in. So if you start feeling like, hey, I'm getting sore after my workouts, dehydration could be a factor. Hey, I'm feeling like I'm cognitively not performing at my best. Again, dehydration could be a factor. So as always, keep it locked in here on my channel, and I'll see you tomorrow.